Hello everyone, and welcome to the International Center on Nonviolent Conflict Academic Webinar Series. Today's webinar, Civil Resistance in Bahrain, Current Political and Communication Challenges, will be delivered by Bahraini journalist Nada Alwadi. Nada Alwadi was a reporter for Al Wasat, the most popular newspaper in Bahrain, and covered the pro-democracy protests this spring for multiple local and international media outlets, including USA Today. Ms. Alwadi was detained in April while reporting on the pro-democracy movements and forced to sign a statement saying that she would not write on or engage in any political activities, and was fired from her job. Ms. Alwadi is the co-founder of the Bahrain Press Association, which seeks to defend Bahraini journalists from government repression. She chose to leave Bahrain earlier this year due to concerns over her personal safety, and is currently working from the US to spread knowledge about the situation in Bahrain and the Middle East as a whole. And with that, I'd like to hand it over to Nada Alwadi.
Hello, good afternoon everyone. Greetings to all of you and thank you for being here to listen to my presentation. I would like to go through some information about my country, Bahrain, the struggle that's going on right now, and I will just shed some light on some of the main political and communication challenges that faces the movement right now. So this is the outline of my presentation today. I'm gonna talk about the timeline of the events that happened in Bahrain in the beginning of this year. Well, started in February 2011, and then I will shed some light on the media blackout in Bahrain and the current political and communication challenges that faces the movement in terms of media. I would also like to shed some light on the ongoing civil resistance movement that is happening in Bahrain right now. And I also want to shed some light on the importance of the civil resistance that is going on in Bahrain now and its larger role in building a new freer Middle East. Just a brief and a quick background to those who doesn't know where Bahrain is and the geopolitics about Bahrain. Bahrain is a very small country. It's an island. It's located in the Gulf region. We are neighbors, as you can see in this map. We are neighbors with Saudi Arabia, Qatar, United Arab Emirates, Kuwait in the north, Iraq, and Iran is actually in the other shore of the Gulf. It's a very small country. It's about 1 million of population. In fact, maybe quarter or third of this population are foreigners. This is the smallest GCC country, and it is actually almost the smallest in the Arab world, but it's very complex, and it have been for a very long time. It have a very interesting and very complex history, goes to very old ages. The society is actually consists of majority Shia. There are debates on basically the main percentage of the Shia to the Sunni, but we can in general say that the majority of the population right now are Shia and the minority are Sunni. And Shia and Sunni are two sects of Islam. We do have in Bahrain, we do have a small percentage of Christians and Jews. All of these people were living in harmony together in this country for generations. The ruling family in Bahrain is Al Khalifa family. It's a Sunni family, and it is supported and backed by the Saudi Arabia, which is our neighbor, and all the ruling families in the GCC countries. All of the system in the Gulf region basically is a monarchy system, and it's somehow related to it has strong ties with each other. All of these countries are supporting each other and have been. They have the GCC Council, which is the Gulf Cooperation Council. It somehow gathers all these countries together in somehow unity. Many people were extremely surprised when a movement happened in Bahrain. As you can see, you probably knew about this region, and what you hear about it is that all of the people who are living here are extremely rich and happy and not very hardworking people. And that's why this movement was actually extremely surprising for many people. But for those who know about Bahrain, who know about the situation that have been going on in the whole region actually and in Bahrain, would know that there are roots and there have been reasons for this movement. I'm just going to shed some light on few points actually that explains to you why this movement happened. We do have a prime minister who have been in power for 40 years, more than 40 years actually. Many people in Bahrain, actually, particularly the majority Shia, have for a very long time argued that there is discrimination against them by the ruling family. And as an example to this discrimination, they use the fact that basically the Shias are not allowed to join the army forces or the police forces. The unemployment rates are very high among Shias, and other services also have been somehow lacked in terms of given to Shias. Also, there is a huge debate and talks that have been for a very long time about the naturalization, which actually resulted into a rapid population growth. The naturalization is something, I guess, very unique in Bahrain because the opposition had for a very long time argued that the government has a plan to bring people from outside the country, give them the nationality, and employ them in the army and the police forces so that they can do the job basically that most of the population are not able or not allowed to do. Also, there was a huge talk about the land owning during the 2010 year after the release of a report by the parliament, actually, the opposition party in the parliament, who have been investigating the land owning, and they issued this report with so many documents saying that a huge percentage of the lands in Bahrain were owned by the ruling family, but nothing happened because of that. Also, the opposition have for a very long time have been talking about an unfair election system. They were saying that the election system that have been established in 2002 actually guarantees that the majority opposition of the population in Bahrain will never get a majority representation or majority seats in the parliament. This also was a huge issue. By the end of 2010, and I remember this vividly, there was a talk everywhere in Bahrain, in seminars and political gatherings, about a deep feeling that the constitutional kingdom or the project towards constitutional kingdom is failing. It's not successful. We do have a parliament, but the parliament doesn't have an authority to change anything on the ground. The election system is unfair, and all these powers are somehow not working together in harmony. They are somehow having the authority directly from the king and the government. So this was the main feeling towards the whole situation inside Bahrain, let's say by the end of the year 2010. And plus all of that, you do have a very politically active society. And Bahrainis have for a very long time been very well known for being extremely active in social life and politics. They understand politics. You can find all varieties of people and different ideologies living in Bahrain. So you can find the liberals and the extreme Islamists and the moderates and the Marxists and the socialists, and all of these guys and all of these ideologies have been hosted basically by the environment inside Bahrain. What happened in Bahrain, starting from because of all of these factors, what happened in Bahrain in February was not new, was not foreign, was not a surprise for people who knew what was going on. This was not the first time. In fact, so many people who have been following the situation in Bahrain very closely, when the movement started in Tunisia and Egypt, they were actually expecting that something similar will happen in Bahrain because of all these reasons. I mean, in the history, in the political history of Bahrain, every decade we would have something like that. When we would have an uprising during the 70s after our independence, there was a well, after the stopping of the parliament and the constitution, there was a movement. And during the 80s, there was a very active movement, basically. And during the 90s, this was a decade of political unrest where it lasted for a very long time, and it resulted into the 2000 reforms. A new king came into power. He changed the political system. He brought a new constitution. He started a political reformation project, which was agreed by the majority of the population. They put their hand in the new king's hand to start a new development and a new Bahrain, basically. But by the year 2005, all the political power felt that this system is not working. In fact, after the issue of the new constitution, there was a huge debate about this constitution, saying that it took the power from the people and gave a lot of authorities to the king and to the government. And this debate was going on for so many years. In 2005, it was escalating until 2010. The struggle was pushing and pulling. It was a serious problem until we reached February 14th, which was the beginning of the recent development in Bahrain, which is the February 14th movement. I'm going to shift now to tell you a little bit what exactly happened in February 14th. What was the timeline of this movement? What happened inside Bahrain? You can see in the picture here the one, well, a symbolic figure, basically, a symbolic monument for Bahraini revolutionaries, or the revolution in Bahrain, which is the Pearl monument. It is located in the central Manama, in the middle of the capital, and it is somehow, you know, became a symbol to the people who were in Bahrain. In January 2011, this picture was taken from a protest by Bahrainis who gathered in front of the Egyptian embassy to support Egyptian people before the fall of Mubarak. I personally feel that this was the beginning of the movement in Bahrain, because, well, when you see the people who basically gathered on the streets supporting the Egyptian people, talking about these movements, and somehow feeling that the successful movement in Egypt will reach them somehow emotionally and even politically. I feel that this was somehow a domino effect, which led to what happened in February 14th. There was a call in Facebook pages and social media for a movement in February 14th, asking all people to go out to protest in different areas. There were maps. There was somehow a plan, basically. We did not expect that this will turn into a serious thing until violence was used against protesters. One person was killed by the end of that day. And then, of course, this was it. It created more anger, more supporters, and more people actually joined the movement somehow. On February 15th, the protesters decided to gather around the Pearl roundabout in the middle of the capital, Manama. There was violence used against them again. More people were killed. More people were supporting the movement and gathering in the middle of the capital, Manama. In February 17th, and it was a very important day and a twist in the events in Bahrain, there was a severe army attack against the protesters who were camping in the middle of the Pearl roundabout. The whole nation went on shock. They never expected that this actually could happen in their very peaceful land. 7 people were killed in that day, and hundreds were injured. And the army took over the Pearl roundabout, And even the medical staff were not allowed to go and treat the injured people. They went on strike. There were attacks against the ambulances and the medical staff. It was an emotional day, and a day with so many surprises, basically, and so many things that moved the Bahrainis to somehow relate to what was going on in the Pearl Roundabout. On February 18th, this was another very important twist in this story. After the funeral of those who have been killed in the previous day, young people, Bahrainis, went back to the Pearl Roundabout. They took their shirts off. They were facing the tanks who were surrounding the area of the Pearl Roundabout. And they were saying that we are peaceful, you can kill us, but we are still standing by our demands. All these photos and many videos actually who have been taken by international media were extremely effective in somehow bringing the story of Bahrain to be international. Everyone was looking towards what's happening in this very small island. Hundreds were injured. There was evidence of using live bullets, and more people were killed actually during that day. By night, in that same day, the crown prince, who's the most moderate person in the royal family, went on national TV saying, everyone calm down, let's have a conversation, let's talk. So he ordered the army to withdraw from the Lulu roundabout, or the Pearl roundabout. And by February 19th, the protesters went back to the Pearl roundabout, set a camp. They went again to continue with their protests. They arranged so many things basically during that time. After that, they were arranging campaigns, marches, they have political debates, they have seminars, and all kinds of activities inside the Pearl Roundabout during this time. These are some photos that have been taken from the Pearl Roundabout during the protest. And in your right, you will see, or probably in your left, a young lady who's carrying a sign saying, I'm a Sunni and I support my people. And this is something very significant here, because this movement have been portrayed as a movement by Shia, which is the majority of the population. Obviously, the majority of those who actually protested in the Pearl Roundabout were actually Shias, but there were Sunnis among them, and they were supporting these demands. And they were saying that this is a national movement. It doesn't have anything to do with the fact that they are Shias or their beliefs or whatever. They were asking for democracy and political demands. The presence of women was extremely visible. Women have been there everywhere. They were organizers, they were leaders, and they were protesters. So, it was something that was extremely big. People were chanting all the time, peaceful, peaceful, and they wanted to say their demands. They felt that, this is something that happened for the first time, and they want to raise their voice for the first time. But then, in March 16th, another very important day in the story, the Saudi forces interfered. So the Peninsula Shield forces entered the country, cracked down on the protesters and the Pearl Roundabout, demolished the Pearl Monument that you see in the picture, and declared the state of emergency law on the country. This Pearl Monument does not exist anymore. It is demolished, and you probably have to know that this is like a symbol of the country. It's like a childhood memory for myself. I'm going to shift now to the Bahrain, the media coverage of this movement, and through that I'm going to basically talk about what was going on after the crackdown. The story of Bahrain was extremely visible in the international media. In your left, you would see the Independent front page. It's talking about a young lady she's a 20 years old poet. She was actually, she's a student, and she read a poem in the Pearl Roundabout. After the crackdown, she was taken from her home and jailed, and she was sentenced to go to jail for 2 years for reading that poem. Her story became extremely big internationally, and so many organizations and media organizations as well supported this case. And I think after this international pressure, she was released. After she was released, she said that she was tortured inside jail. Her story is not unique or exceptional. There have been so many stories similar to her story. In your right, you will see this is a news taken from the Washington Post a few days ago, actually. I wanted to use this news to shed some light on what was going on basically inside the United States government in terms of Bahrain. This news was extremely big when some forces or some congressmen supported the fact that they wanted to somehow freeze an armed deal with the Bahraini government, because they believe that selling weapons to a country that's using it against their own people is not ethical. So this was a huge news actually recently, and this was covered widely in the international media. But for a very long time, Bahrainis and I personally felt that there was a complete media blackout for this story. First of all, to explain why there was a media blackout, even internationally, politically, United States is actually not in favor for any political change in Bahrain. For so many reasons. We do actually host the United States Fifth Fleet in our country. Saudi Arabia is extremely involved in this situation in Bahrain, and Saudi Arabia is actually not in favor of any let's say, democratic change in Bahrain. And of course, Saudi Arabia is well known for being the biggest ally for the United States. There have been so many attempts basically to kill the image of the movement in the media internationally by first of all silencing local journalists. So local journalists have been attacked or fired or targeted or jailed or tortured or left the country. The international media is not allowed to go inside the country and move freely. They have to be escorted, and they have very limited access to what is going on inside the country. And also, many people who are living in the United States particularly know that, obviously there have been so many lobbyings working to somehow furnish the image of the Bahraini government and what was going on in Bahrain, and show that everything was fine and things were going well, and the people are having with the dialogue with their government. And there is a truth commission which was basically established by the king himself to look into the events that happened during this movement and issue this report. Everyone is waiting for this report actually, which will be released next month. There have been a lot of debate towards this report. Many people feel that it might somehow help the government, and many people believe that this report will not change anything on the ground, or this report will be the solution to the problem. So everyone is basically waiting for this. Also, I think the movement that happened in Bahrain somehow was overshadowed by what was going on in all of the rest of the Middle East. So you have a movement in Egypt and Libya and Syria, and everything is going on around Bahrain. And Bahrain is such a small country, even though you hear about like 45 people being killed in this country, and many people feel that, okay, this is such a small number compared to thousands who have been killed otherwise in other places. But of course, looking into the percentage, this is a very huge percentage, because it's a very small country, and that's why basically it is significant. So as an alternative for this media blackout, which was going on for some time, social media was big, basically. The story of Bahrain was highly covered by social media: Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. There was a launch of a new TV channel called the Lulu channel, and you can probably see that, you know, they use the Pearl monument as a symbol to this channel to say that, okay, this is the voice of those who have lost the voice during the movement. And of course, this channel is banned inside Bahrain. There is this another website called Bahrain Mirror, and Bahraini journalists who left the country actually started this website to somehow cover the events inside and outside Bahrain, and, you know, write analysis and articles related to that. Shouting in the dark. This is something extremely important and significant. I believe I put it in the resources that you guys can, you know, go back and check it out. If any one of you is interested, I really recommend that you see this documentary. This documentary was done by Al Jazeera English, and it was aired a few months ago, and it was an amazing piece of journalism work, because the crew of Al Jazeera English was in the ground. They went everywhere during the movement. They captured the significant moments of the whole movement, and they put it together in this documentary. And of course, you can probably know that, you know, this releasing this documentary or airing this documentary created a lot of debate and clashes between the Bahraini government and the Qatari government, which owns and controls the Al Jazeera. They said, you know, there is a political change here, and, you know, the foreign ministers in both countries were somehow, you know, exchanging statements regarding this documentary. But this documentary was aired, and it is still available online on their website. This is the third part of my presentation. It is talking about the ongoing civil resistance in Bahrain. What is happening now? The movement actually, even though the crackdown was big and there was a media blackout, and people outside were not actually sure that this movement was still going on, the things on the ground were pretty much active and actually never stopped. There were, we hear news about protests every single day, and police attacking all of these protesters every single day, every night, in the villages and in different areas. It was pretty much alive, even though there was nobody watching. So many people were killed during this time. Basically, young people. There have been so many stories talking about people who have been killed or targeted or jailed, or even killed in jail. So, you know, there are so many documents and stories written about that. Outside Bahrain, many people actually left Bahrain after the crackdown, and they started being extremely active in so many parts of the world. This photo was taken from a protest in front of the Capitol Hill last week. There was an advocacy day for Bahrain in one of the Congress buildings. So Bahrainis in the United States gathered in front of the Capitol Hill, saying that, okay, we encourage the United States government to stay beside the Bahraini people. In UK also, there have been a lot of activities supporting the movement and supporting different parties in the movement. I chose to mention the doctors, who have been a big story basically in this movement. The doctors have been jailed, and they were sentenced to go to jail for extremely long times for being, occupying a hospital or some kind of accusations that many people felt that it's not actually doesn't make any sense. So there have been a lot of support around the world towards doctors and nurses and medical staff, and there was a lot of support also from medical organizations and doctors around the world to support these people. In your right, there is another photo from the same protest in front of the Capitol Hill, mentioning that United States should not care that much towards the fact that it's the headquarter. Bahrain is the headquarter of the United States Fifth Fleet. It should not be a factor to stop the United States to do anything regarding the human rights violations inside this country. After, of course, many people left the country and started so many things around the world, we found so many groups who started different organizations or associations to gather their effort professionally to say that, okay, this actually happened. One of them is actually the BPA. It's the Bahraini Press Association. It's a coalition for journalists, Bahraini journalists, who left the country and many who are still inside the country. They basically gathered to say that, okay, they wanted to defend the journalists and the Bahraini journalists and international journalists who were attacked or targeted somehow inside Bahrain during the movement. This is the cover of their first report, which actually documented all these violations against the media people or journalists during the movement and the uprising in Bahrain. And this document, I also put it as a resource for you guys. You can find it. You can read all these violations and documentations. This report have been used widely by journalist organizations and organizations who are dealing with freedom of expression. Another thing is, of course, related to the doctors. There have been a lot of campaigns and coalitions and organizations to somehow gather the Bahraini doctors, particularly those who left the country. They established a union for them to raise their voice and support those who are in jail right now, and asking to release them and to give them freedom, because basically they were targeted because of doing their job. I also want to shed some light on something I think is a very important twist in the Bahraini story, which is the Manama document. It's a document which was released a week ago or 2 weeks ago by a coalition of the opposition groups in Bahrain. This document, actually, the Manama document, put together all the things that these particular political groups stand for, what they actually want. And I think looking into the demands of these groups is very important to understand where the movement in general stands for. They are asking for an elected government representing well of the people rather than an appointed government. They are asking for a fair electoral district guaranteeing political equality amongst the people and meeting the universal principle of one person, one vote. They are asking for a parliament comprising of a single chamber having sole legislative and regulatory powers, replacing the current bicameral arrangement, one elected and the other one appointed. A trustworthy judicial system independent from the executive branch, both financially and administratively. And they are also asking for a security for all via participation of all walks of life in the country, information of the army and other security appearance of the basis of providing security for all. My last section of this presentation will shed some light on the importance of the civil resistance in Bahrain and its larger role in building a new, freer Middle East. These photos that you are seeing in front of you were taken for a conference held in Egypt in October 2011, a few weeks ago. And there were members from all of the countries who have revolutions inside them: Egypt, Tunisia, Libya, Bahrain, Syria, Yemen, and Palestine. This is something that is extremely significant because many people in the Middle East now believe that all the movements that are going on around the Middle East in so many countries will never succeed if those who are involved in these movements did not get together and have like a greater plan for a new Middle East. Bahrain was actually in the heart of this. Because of the government propaganda and trying to somehow isolate Bahrain from these movements, saying that this is a conflict between Shia and Sunni and the sectarian divide inside the country, there have been a lot of effort somehow to isolate Bahrain from these movements. But uh, people who are engaged in the movement and who are raising the demands were highly supported by those who are involved in similar movements in other countries. So they started something, they wanted to work together, they felt that this change will somehow lead to a greater change in the whole region. How can we link Bahrain to the movements inside the Arabian countries? This is an argument that was made by the opposition when they actually visited Egypt recently and met with all the opposition parties in Egypt and talked to them about their demands and presented the document that I just showed you. They said that, you know, the failure of a Bahraini movement will actually lead to the failure of the movements, the whole movements in the region, and particularly the movement in Egypt. Why? Because basically what is happening now in the whole Middle East is a conflict between people who support the old regimes in general and those who support a new Middle East. And if such a movement, and Bahrain is actually in the heart of that, because those who are raising their voices inside Bahrain are supporting a new Bahrain with more democratic demands, a change in the system, very similar to what was to the demands in all of these Arab countries. But those who are opposing this movement are supporting the current system. They want the system not to be changed. They are not supporting any political change. And this language is highly heard in these countries, particularly who have a similar conflict actually in different scenarios. Also, the argument of the opposition was also that the Bahrain can actually provoke a sectarian divide in the region, because basically this particular movement was somehow portrayed as a sectarian divide or a sectarian conflict between Shias and Sunnis inside the Bahrain. This very tiny island can be a door to bring a trouble to the region, because of course this is the identity of the region. There are Shias and there are Sunnis, and if this particular struggle and conflict escalated in Bahrain, this will be a door to bring a bigger conflict in the whole region. Also, there are evidence and reports saying that, well, after Mubarak stepped down in Egypt, Egypt actually lost a lot of investments from the Gulf region. The Gulf, the richest region in the Arab world, they actually took their investments from Egypt after the lose of Mubarak, particularly because obviously you have a conflict, you have a struggle between people who do not want a new Egypt, or and Egypt here is an example actually, a new system in Egypt, because this will lead to new systems in other countries, and this will somehow jeopardize the old system's power and might somehow endanger it. In Bahrain also, basically many people believe that this is a conflict and it's a battle between people who want democratic change and people who don't want democratic change, and this is widely understood in the whole Middle East. I wanted to end with this photo. I found it really inspiring. This is a protest which was in London, took over in London, and you can see all these signs from all these Arab countries supporting. You can see Egypt, you can see Bahrain, you can see Libya, you can see Palestine. You can see all of these are standing for the same thing, basically. They want change. They want a more and a freer democratic society. Thank you so much for listening to me, and I think I'm going to open it for discussion now. If any of you have a question, please go ahead.
Thank you so much, Nada, for your presentation. And just to remind everybody who's listening out there, there's two ways for you to ask a question. If you have a microphone on your computer or if you have connected by telephone, you can click the raise hand button on the toolbar. And if you don't have that, you can just type it into the questions pane on the toolbar, and I will read it out for you. So we have one person who's ready with their question. Ayushman, please go ahead. Okay, it looks like he typed in a question. And this question is, what pillars of support of the monarchy can and or should the protesters in Bahrain target to enhance the momentum of the pro-democracy movement?
Okay. Thank you so much, Aishman, for this question, and I think it's a very important question, and I think it's to answer this question will be basically the whole solution to the whole conflict. I think, Bahrain particularly being, being governed with a monarchy system, they have a unique pillars of support inside the government. It's not like the standard pillars of support to any government. So it's a monarchy, it's a royal family, it's somehow a tribal system. So you have all of the powers are actually in the hands of this particular family. So you have the army, which is a very important pillar, and you have the social security forces also inside in the hands of another part of the royal family, and you have all the basically the economy and the investments also in another chamber or another wing inside the royal family. So and also even the legislative part and the powers of support inside that. Of course, to somehow succeed in raising the voice or somehow pushing towards the movement, you need to somehow show that all of these pillars are not working. And I personally feel that media is very important here. The pressure that is going on outside the country now is extremely important. For example, all this pressure here in the United States on the Congress led to somehow stopping or freezing this armed deal with the government. And this is a huge thing. What happened recently actually is that this deal was frozen. And this is, of course, weakening a very important pillar in the government. Something like this and more actions like this might somehow lead to a real change or a successful movement, basically.
Okay, our next question comes from Layla. Please go ahead, Layla.
Salam, and thank you for this beautiful program. My question is regarding the Bahrain foreign policy. Based on the huge arms sales by the United States to Saudi Arabia almost last year, $67 billion, and just a couple of weeks ago, another big arms sales to Bahrain for the $7 billion. Do you see any possibility of Bahrain, along with Saudi Arabia, attack Iran or in support with the United States?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Layla, for this question. I also feel this is an important question here. Actually, so many people in the region are raising this question, actually inside Bahrain, raising this question, particularly after this escalation of talks against Iran and the assassination attack against the Saudi ambassador here in DC, and whether this was somehow, a beginning of an attack against Iran. I personally feel that there will never be an attack against Iran, and simply because it is not, no one will benefit from this. Not the whole Gulf region will actually, and they know this very well. will never benefit from any attack against Iran. In fact, Iran was actually used in this particular conflict to somehow kill the local movement. This is a movement that happened by the people for their own demands. But obviously, I mean, this is a card that have been played over and over in our history in Bahrain because, majority of Bahrainis are Shias and they are involved in this movement. So they use the Iranian monster somehow to show the world that, okay, those guys have been provoked by the neighbor in Iran and they are working to help, Iranians. And this doesn't make sense for so many reasons, actually. Particularly because Iranian regime is actually extremely dictatorship, and those guys are asking for democracy, so it doesn't actually make any sense. And also, which is it's actually ironic, recently the main statement of the Bahraini foreign minister who actually met with the Iranian foreign minister, they actually met a few days ago, actually maybe one week ago. So they met, and the Bahraini foreign minister said this statement, saying that we should, reestablish our relationship. We are neighbors, and our problem was mainly against the media. They were basically against the media who have been the Iranian media who have been working against the movement, against the Bahraini government supporting the movement and spreading the news about what's going on. So they were against the press TV and these channels. So he said this statement was extremely important to show that, in fact, this was just a card that have been played. I don't believe that there will be an attack against Iran, and I don't feel this is something that can be somehow used in the region, even in terms of the United States. But anything is possible now, actually.
Thanks, Nada. Our next question comes from Trond. Please go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much. I have a couple of questions dealing with leadership and strategy of the movement. Could you tell us, please, a little bit more about who's making up the leadership of the movement? And after the movement first failed, as you said, what is now the strategy for achieving changes?
Mm-hmm.
And since using mass demonstrations didn't work out so well, are there other kinds of actions and activities that are now preferred?
Thank you so much for this question. Leadership and strategy of the movement have been an extremely important topic that everyone was talking about. So basically, those who started the movement, nobody knew, and still nobody knows who they are. Nobody is taking credit. Nobody is, stepping in front and saying, we are the leaders of this movement. But obviously, we do have a lot of opposition groups and powers who have been already in the ground, basically, and they took part in the movement who was started by a group of people. Many people believe that they are young people who started exactly like Egypt model, calling for this demonstration. But then, many people supported, and then many people actually, and I personally felt that, in fact, what was going on in Bahrain was really lacking leadership. There was no leadership. Nobody could can say that we have the upper hand or the last saying or the power to somehow lead the crowd or deal them. But now, after the crackdown, of course, and you have all these powers everywhere, now they are getting organized. They are forming the leadership now. This is the phase for organization. This is the phase for putting a strategy. And what I explained to you in the presentation about the Panama document, this is somehow a very important twist in the story, because this is the first time that a set of demands will be published and publicized by well, majority of the opposition groups who are, somehow, representing a lot of groups on the ground. And I also have to say here that there are groups of the opposition on the ground, and even people who are living outside the Bahrain, who have been living there for a long time. They actually don't agree with this or with these demands. They actually have more radical views. They feel that they can't put up with with the ceiling that was established by the opposition groups, because they basically are supporting reforms. But those more radical groups, they ask for somehow changing the whole system, or changing the whole regime. So now there is this conflict even within the movement, within those who support the movement. And what is happening now is that the strategy is being formed, let's say. This is my response to your question. There is no clear strategy on, okay, how to work together, but this is a step, what is happening outside Bahrain. And obviously, those guys who are on the ground, who are the key player basically in this movement, those are making the news basically. They are using new techniques every day, in terms of, they don't protest anymore, they use new techniques, different techniques. Maybe I can do another presentation explaining what they are doing now on the ground. But basically they use all kinds of techniques, humor, jokes, videos, drama, role playing, songs, different things to show their voice, to show that we are still exist and we do have a saying. So it's still continuing. We'll see what will happen.
Okay, our next question comes from Tim. Please go ahead, Tim. Okay, it looks like the audio isn't working. I have a question from Christine, who wrote this in. Christine asks, you mentioned that women were actively participating in the movement. Are they being included in leadership meetings, conferences, etc.? And if so, how?
Yes, thank you for this question. I also feel this is a very important question. Yes. Well, in fact, I have always been myself extremely active in women issues. I have been writing about it a lot, and I personally was moved during the movement particularly by the role which was played by women. It was an amazing role, basically. They were everywhere. They were leaders. They took part in everything. They were jailed. They were tortured. They somehow paid the price, exactly the same. And that's why their punishment was exactly the same. We come from an Eastern culture where women are actually somehow very respected and, somehow protected. So to jail a woman or punish a woman or torture a woman, this is a big deal. But yet it is happening. Why? Because women were really active during the movement. They were really visible. They were extremely effective, particularly in terms of international media. So we have, we have two female figures who have been jailed for actually more than 6 months, a doctor and a nurse actually, and a teacher, who have been, tortured and jailed, and their story was extremely big everywhere, and they were released recently. In fact, the teacher was taken to jail again, and she was just released today. So basically all of these figures have been extremely active. Now, in terms of leadership, they can't be ignored, because these women are doctors who have been affected. They lost their jobs. They are teachers. They are journalists. They have been there. So now they are taking a very important role in terms of, arranging the movement and somehow putting their input on what's going on, what should be done. In fact, I know that there will be a presentation about the role of women in Bahrain in here in DC next week, and well, a political figure, female, and a doctor are going to take part in this presentation, talking about what happened to them and what they are doing right now. So if you see, for example, the Journalists Association, which was formed after this, I personally am involved in this organization. If you see the organization of doctors, you will see females also. So, you know, their role can't be ignored anymore. This is, you know, something that they have worked for as well.
Okay, just looking at the clock, we have a few more minutes. The next question comes from Mark, and Mark asks, what do you think the role of international organizations should be? Should this be a purely popular movement without the intervention of foreign governments or NGOs, or is some assistance appropriate and wanted?
Thank you so much for this question. I feel that, of course, support is needed, big time. International support is very important. The international pressure actually have a real effect on the ground. When the story of the doctors became big and all these international organizations were extremely supportive towards these doctors, they were released because of this international pressure. And, you know, anything that is written in the international media or statements or, you know, any actions outside affects people's lives actually inside. The story of those who have lost their jobs and have been fired for participating in you know, pro-democracy protests is still a huge story. So many organizations, labor organizations are you know, involved. They visit Bahrain. They are outspoken. They issue statements to support those who lost their jobs. In terms of, you know, their action is you know, humanitarian basically. So also, you know, human rights organizations and organizations who are you know, supporting freedom of expression. Basically all so many organizations internationally have been extremely active in this story, and their role was extremely significant. And I feel that nothing can be done inside Bahrain without that. This is actually a key factor.
Okay, one more question from Tim, who called back from his cell phone. Please go ahead, Tim.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, hey, Nada, thanks for your presentation and, you know, educating us.
Sure.
So, hey, my question is, you know, I was just wondering, like, since, you know, especially like neighboring countries like, you know, UAE and then Saudis are pretty much supporting the regime, and as well as also sending all the troops to suppress the, you know, the movement. I was just wondering, is there any plans or strategies or maybe even actions are currently taking place within the, you know, opposition movement to reach out to these, you know, supporters from these countries to, you know, educate them and, you know, so that they can pressure their own government or regimes not to support this Bahrain, you know, current regime.
Thank you, Tim, for this question. And I also feel that this is a very important question. In fact, as I said in my presentation, that, you know, this coalition between those who support movements and the whole Arab world is a key factor for all of them to succeed in what they are asking for. In terms of the Gulf region, of course, you know, the support, I mean, the backing of the Bahraini government by all of the governments in the GCC countries is understandable, of course. I mean, they all represent the same system and they have this coalition. And there have been a lot of pressure from people who have been living, who are living in all of these countries towards their governments to change something. Many people who have been active in Bahrain were talking a lot with people in Saudi Arabia and in Kuwait and some in UAE to somehow have an you know, somehow shared activity or something to support the, you know, the what is going on in Bahrain. Kuwait particularly was extremely involved and extremely supportive since the beginning. In fact, the advocacy day that took place here in the United States, in Washington D.C. in the Congress last week, one of the speakers was actually a human rights lawyer who's a Kuwaiti citizen who basically adopted the Bahraini case. He is representing the Bahraini case everywhere he goes. He initiated this coalition to support the Bahraini people, and they are putting up a file to present this case towards the criminal court in Geneva. So there have been a lot of support from and pressure from let's say the NGO level or the people's level in the Gulf region, of course, but not formally, because this is a very sensitive issue, and it will be extremely sensitive for anyone, an official or any organization, to state like formally that they actually support the Bahrainis, because this will be something against their own government or the Bahraini government.
Okay, thank you so much, Nada. Unfortunately, we are out of time, and I see there's still a lot of really good questions, people who are interested. I'm sorry we couldn't get to everybody's questions with the limited time that we do have. But if you do have something you want to ask to Nada, you can email us at webinar@nonviolent-conflict.org, as I mentioned, and we'll be sure to forward it to her for you. And were there any closing remarks you wanted to make, Nada?
Thank you. I just wanted to say that this story is pretty much alive, and I personally feel it will become bigger very soon. Things are moving very fast actually recently, and I mean, it's a very important story. I really encourage anyone to go and look into it. Any change in this tiny island, I feel, will definitely lead to a significant change in the whole region, and we are all watching what is happening and being involved.
Thank you so much. And as a reminder to everyone, this webinar has been recorded. So if you came in halfway through, or if you know somebody who was busy and wasn't able to make it, we will be sure to post up to our website so you can go back and watch the whole thing in its entirety. And we will also be sure to post all of the links to the documentaries and the documents and everything else that Nada mentioned to that page. So you can visit us at www.nonviolent-conflict.org. And if you click on Educational Initiatives, you can find the academic webinar series, and it should be listed under there. And feel free to come find us on Facebook or find us on Twitter. We are at NVConflict. And thanks again, everyone, for joining us. And thank you so much, Nada, for your presentation.
Thank you so much, Jake, and thank you for all of you.